Hi, my name is Vanessa Palm. I am a personal trainer and health and wellness coach. One of the ladies that I train, I have a free home training group that I started at the beginning of lockdown and is still going and growing fabulously. And one of the ladies sent me a query because I do offer personal support as well if anybody is concerned or has questions around their own process. And the question was, what is an endomorph and how do I know if I am one? Well, firstly, an endomorph is a body type. So there are body types that are fashion related, like you get the pear shape and the apple shape and so on and so forth, and that relates to how clothing would fit you or how a fashion stylist would style you. But then you get the kind of if I was looking at your body as a trainer and I would say, right, you're an ectomorph, meaning that you are slim and you probably have a very high metabolism, you struggle to gain weight, you're the girl or the boy, or I'm speaking to women, you're the girl who all of us can't stand because your whole life you've always been able to eat whatever you wanted to, that loaf of bread, 13 slabs of chocolate, and get away with it. In fact, you'd probably lose weight. There are downsides to being an ectomorph, there are downsides to being the ectomorph, because you struggle to pick up weight, you struggle to gain muscle, and as you get older, your metabolism starts to change, and suddenly you need to develop an entirely new lifestyle because things are not just quite as forgiving as they used to be. Also, you've never needed aesthetically to train, which means that as an ectomorph, your bone density is compromised when you're older if you never pick up resistance training. Your skeleton and ligaments and tendons aren't as conditioned because you haven't had to. I'm not saying there are ectomorphs who just train naturally. I'm talking about people who are just naturally skinny, have never stepped inside a gym, start to run into all sorts of skeletal and musculoskeletal issues often, not all the time, but often when they're older, and again, metabolism changes. Then you get the mesomorph, which is that one that ultimately, actually, in my opinion, is where you want to be. It's balance. It's a beautiful, there's tone, there's well, not necessarily tone, but there's a balance between muscle, fat, skeleton, the size, good balanced shape, kind of more the hourglass type figure. And then there's the endomorph. And an endomorph is that person that looks at a chocolate and picks up weight instantly. And obviously all of this is just layman orientated, okay, so it's more for your entertainment pleasure, but so you've got an idea of what we're working with. An endomorph generally is somebody who is constantly on some kind of a calorie restricted diet, trying to lose weight, generally has a higher fat mass, obviously with muscle mass as well, but just really struggles to lose what they might refer to themselves as being squidgy. So understand one thing. While we are all pre-genetically disposed to being one of those three, it doesn't mean that you're going to be that way for the rest of your life. And it also doesn't mean that naturally, there will be changes in your metabolism as you grow. And also, depending on your lifestyle, I'm not talking about training, but just your lifestyle, you might find that some of those may change naturally. And then, of course, if you introduce training, that would change. And then they can all be nutritionally managed. So especially when you combine training with your nutrition, you can tip the scales in terms of your muscle mass. And as soon as you increase your muscle mass, that changes the way your body reacts to or behaves with respect to the storage of fat, because you need to burn fat to your muscles will burn more fat while they are being worked, if that makes sense. So you could be an endomorph and become a mesomorph. It would be highly unlikely for you to become an ectomorph unless something radical happens with your metabolism. Look, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a biochemist, I'm not a dietitian. So understand, I'm telling you this as a personal trainer and wellness coach with those that experience behind me and that certification behind me. So this is just so that you can understand, first and foremost, when you look at those elements of yourself, where would you place yourself? And some people might be on the cusp between the two. Understand, nothing is fixed and firm, and nothing is black and white. One of the really, really important things to know is that there is a different calorie. Everybody obviously has their daily calorie consumption, but calories are made up of macros, and there are three major macros we would look at. We would look at fats, we would look at proteins, and we would look at carbohydrates. Now, traditionally speaking, we've always said that protein is really important, which it is, because you need enough protein to be available in your body so that when your muscles are busy repairing themselves after a workout, that they have protein available to them to metabolize, so that they don't chomp up things they shouldn't be chomping up. But it's really important that the carbohydrate element of our diets is paramount to us achieving the kinds of results we want to achieve. And if your carbohydrates are too low, that it just throws the whole balance out. And often, especially in the old school thinking that a lot of the time I've grown up with, that we try to limit our carbohydrates. But you also need to understand, carbohydrates are not necessarily your thick, starchy, full-on carbs like potatoes and stuff like that. Carbohydrates exist in everything. So you need to download an app. There's a great one in South Africa called Fat Secret. There are others available. But you need to go and then just start educating yourself on what those major macros, just ignore the minor macros for now, the breakup of the macros. Look at your fats, look at your carbohydrates, and look at your proteins, so that you can start to get a sense of what everything takes from, what everything is made up of. That includes your vegetables, your fruits. Some things would be surprisingly high in carbohydrate that you wouldn't even think of. But don't be afraid of carbohydrates. An ectomorph would have the highest amount of carbohydrate in their diet in terms of out of 100%. A mesomorph would have a little bit less, and then the endomorph would have a little bit less. And then there's this percentage of fat that you would have every day, and there's a percentage of protein you would have every day. So just Google mesomorph, ectomorph, and endomorph, and you will find a number of places where it gives you a breakdown of what your macros should be. And take charge. It's really quite fun to understand what it is that you need to be doing. Okay, I hope that answers your question.